Hey guys, this is Yash. Over this lecture video, I'm going to show you how we can generate custom avatars using open source Photomaker and without writing a single line of code. So we're going to be using something called Pinokio. In order to do this, you can go here and then effectively Pinokio enables you to run a bunch of scripts without going through all the complexities that at least we had to go through early on, especially for scenarios where you want to generate like custom avatars of yourself or avatars in general. And this is super simple to set up. You can see you can basically write a prompt like this and generate something like this. It also offers a bunch of other things beyond Photomaker, which is something that we're going to be using here today. It offers Comfy UI, which is an ecosystem to run stable diffusion models and other open source models. And then there are a bunch of different things that you can also try out once you learn how to use this. Note that almost all of these models require some sort of video processing capacity or video RAM in order to run it. And some of these also require specifically NVIDIA GPUs. So, it's important to note that if you're trying or generating images, videos, or audios using Pinokio or any of these open source models, you will need to have graphic cards and in some cases, NVIDIA specific graphic cards. So with that out of the way, let's just start generating or setting up Pinokio in your local system. Note that you don't need any sort of programming tool right now, or I think over the tutorial itself. All you have to do is follow along the tutorial. So step one would be to download Pinokio. So the setup is super simple, but it kind of takes long to download certain files, and that's only one time. So in order to set this up, you need to go to docs.pinokio.computer/download. You can also Google it and then just click on download here. Once you reach the download screen, you choose which operating system you're using. In my case, I'm going to be choosing Windows. Click on Windows and then choose the download option. So once you download this exe or installer file, you should see something like this when you're trying to install, and this is different for when you're doing it on Mac. You can see on Mac they have instructions, and then on Windows they have separate instructions. It's very straightforward to follow through, so it shouldn't be a problem. So go ahead and install this in your local computer, and post that you should see something like this. And you have to choose from the options here. These are basically different sort of models that are available at your disposal on Pinokio. So there is Comfy UI, which is where you will be able to run workflows for stable diffusion, stable video diffusion, and so on. And then there are a bunch of options which, some of these I don't even know, but I'm going to be trying it out in the future videos. I've used Focus. So that's also something you can use here. Dream Talk. There are a lot of things that you can basically try out here without going through that complex installation system that we had prior to this. So in my case, I'm going to be choosing Photomaker. Once you click on Photomaker, you have the option to download here. Go ahead and click the download option. You should be able to see something like this. Typically, or prior to Pinokio world, what basically happened is that everything that you had to install in order to run a model, you had to do it separately. So you would install Python packages and stuff like that. And this would kind of be a lot of back and forth process of debugging. So if there's an issue, you have to go through the GitHub page, you read about the issue, and then you come back. Really very complex that way. Now, post Pinokio, it becomes very simple because it's kind of packaged the entire process without the complexity of installing each package separately and so on and so forth. You can visit the GitHub page that you're installing the library for. So let's say we go ahead and open this one, and this will open something like this. And this is basically the library that you will be setting up in the local system. One thing that kind of surprises me, I don't see too many stars here, or I don't see description. It seems very different from, it comes to the perspective of having good GitHub repository. This does not seem like one. It seems like a very new GitHub repository that was recently set up. But let's go ahead and install this anyway. So once you click on download, it would take around 5 to 10 minutes to install. And post the installation is completed, you will see something like this with an option to install here and not installing. I'm currently installing. You can see I'm installing PyTorch. You will have an option to install it here. So you click that, and this will start yet another installation process that should look like this. And it's downloading all the necessary packages specifically to run Photomaker. Once this is ready, I should be able to run it in the local system. So let's wait for this installation to complete, and post that I'll kind of walk you through how the UI looks like and the kind of things that you can do in Photomaker per se. But let's just wait for this to complete installation. Again, while the installation happens, I just want to quickly clarify that certain things here will kind of require you to have great graphics or video memory in your computer before you can run them. One of those things would be here, stream diffusion. So you need NVIDIA graphics in order to run this, or any sort of video memory in order to run most of these in general, right? Because they require you to do a lot of heavy processing in the backend, which generally older CPUs do not support. So be mindful of the fact that if you have a computer that is not too powerful, you won't be able to kind of run most of these here. So there may be certain things that you will be able to run, but I don't know which ones those would be. At least from the ones that I see right now, most of these will require you to have a good graphics in place in order to run it. Again, another sneak peek into the installation process. You can see it's already done installing the Torch Vision, and it's kind of installing a bunch of other libraries now. But don't worry, you don't need to know how any of these libraries work. These are basically Python libraries that allow you to do one or the other task. And so when machine learning models are installed locally, effectively what happens is that these libraries work with each other in order to kind of achieve certain things that the model needs to achieve. Now, you don't necessarily need to know what these packages are, especially after Pinokio. Prior to this, you did probably need to spend some time to understand more about the package, because if there is some issue, you'll probably have to do debugging yourself. But in this scenario, it seems that we don't really need to invest so much time worrying about the packages. And like I said, it kind of takes some time, but it seems it's done. So you can see there's an option to click on start and get started. So let me just kind of see how that works. Effectively, when you click on start, this should be able to kind of create a local link for you to go on and try out the product. You can see it's now downloading the Photomaker V1 bin. Guessing this is actually the model that will run the image generation on. So again, it's going to take a few more minutes. So let's just wait for the installation to get done here, and then I'll continue showing you what happens next. So the model downloading is almost done. I'm just waiting for it to complete. But you can see there are some errors here. No module name return found. So basically, these are all cases where Python tries to access certain packages and it's not able to find, and then it would throw things like these. And I don't know if Pinokio is configured to handle these problems, but let's just wait for it to complete this installation, and then post that. Let's see if we can externally manually install it. I hope I don't have to do that, but let's see if Pinokio is able to handle it. You can see the installation is complete. It's also fetching a few more files, and then there is the Diffusion PyTorch FP16 model, which is 5 GB, and this is going to take some time to download as well. So I'm just going to wait for it to do the complete installation and then kind of get back to you. You can see the last model that was downloaded was 5 GB approx. And there are a couple of issues you will face when you're downloading this, right? So let's say when you actually start downloading, there are 3 models that will start downloading. One of the models is this, which is 5 GB. The other 2 are smaller ones. So I think one of them is 168 MB or so, and the other one is 1.6 gigabytes. Now, every time any of those model is downloaded, unfortunately what will happen is the app will crash because the other 2 will not be downloaded. So what you will have to do is you have to stop this or just close this and go back to Pinokio, open the app, and then click on install again. That will ensure that each of the files are downloaded separately. Unfortunately, none of the videos on YouTube were showing what was actually the problem, but I think if you do this, it will be fixed. Now, once you have all the 3 files downloaded, basically these 3 files are the models that will be utilized in order to kind of make the generations work. So once these are downloaded, you will see something like this running on local URL, and you click on this and it will open the link or the UI for you, right? And you can see this is one of the image that I tried generating. I mean, this is not exactly how I look, but I'm going to be trying and generating again. This is like the very first shot that I tried generating, but let me walk you through how that's done now that the installation is done. We'll try generating a couple of images to see how good or bad this Photomaker really is. So you can see some of the samples here, and let me just show you how this works as well. All right, so this is something you would see once you get to the link here. And then you have an option to upload an image. Now you can upload one image and generate the image, or you can upload more than one images, which will improve the quality of the final generation and still, generate the images that you want. The other thing that you need to keep in mind is your character prompt or character keyword is IMG. So you can say generate an image of IMG, which is your character prompt, man or woman, right? So in this case, we're going to say man. And this will ensure that whatever your prompt is, IMG is actually the thing that you need to do. So for example, if you were to generate the image of a cat, then you would use prompt as cat. Similarly, if you want to generate your image or whatever face you're uploading here, you need to use IMG for it. Second, you can choose from the templates. You can see these are options that you can choose from. So there is cinematic, Disney character, digital art, photographic, default, and then there are a bunch of options here. Then there is the advanced options, which has a by default negative prompt, which I think is okay for you to leave as is. Second, number of sampling steps. This is basically how long the model needs to iterate before it generates the final image. 50 will generate a very accurate image. More than that will also generate a better image, but less than that will generate maybe a less quality image. It will be faster because it's running on for less times. For me, 30 works really well. Style strength is basically how much you want to follow the style. So let's say if I choose style strength as 20%, it will take 20% of weight for this style and rest of the weight for the prompt that we added. Number of output images is very straightforward. So you can choose to be two to generate 2 or 3 or 4 or maybe even 1. The more images, the longer it takes, the less images, the less it takes. And then finally, guidance scale. Guidance scale is basically how closely you want the image to be aligned with the prompt that you put in here. Basically, this reduces the potential of random generation. So 5 here is fine. Then there are some samples here that you can actually put in. So Instagram photo portrait of a woman, IMG colorful perfect face. Then sci-fi closer portrait of a man, IMG. So let's just take this one. You can see it also has some sample images that you can remove. And I'm going to be choosing some of my own images here. You can see these are some of the samples that I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using the same prompt. Obviously, because we are not using and we are using by default a style template here, we'll not be choosing any style. And then there are negative prompts again, which are part of the style itself. So let's just go ahead and use the image and see what we're able to generate. Now, typically the time taken here will depend on the GPU you have in your computer. So if you have a stronger computer, this will be way faster. For a weaker computer, this will take very long time. So I have a NVIDIA GPU, which ensures that the image generations are relatively faster. Plus you can see less the number of steps, the faster the generation happens. So in my scenario, it says like 44 seconds to generate the image. But you can always manipulate these styles here and you can generate less number of images to generate the final image. And this is bizarre. I mean, it's not too bad. But this is how the final generation looks like. You can see I'm wearing like an Iron Man suit. Again, it's not the perfect generation in the world, but it looks okay, right? So let's just try generating photographic image and see what we're able to generate. Let's change this to 30. I don't know how to access the older, the previous negative prompts that I had. So let's just say a photo of IMG man. You can actually go wild with these, generate like weird generations of say a human and a cat, and it kind of generates like a blend of those images. But that's for you to try out. Like you can play around with this. We're going to be trying a few generations here and there as well. But let's just try some basic generations first to see how it looks. Again, it's the fact that it's generating relatively faster is good. Based on at least some of the images or samples that I've seen, the generations were very slow. You see, these are the images of IMG man. Again, the clearer your photos are, the better the generations are. And plus, one of the things that you also need to keep in mind is that if your face is clearly visible in the image, the generations are way better. But if you have images like these where you're showing like full body shots, it's not going to generate great images. So let me just make some modifications, add a few more images and see what kind of images we are able to generate post that. Okay, now I have a few headshots. I hope the generations now look relatively closer to how I look. All right, so let's see what kind of images we're able to generate now. You can see these are some of the negative prompts that are taken from the template that we used. But overall, like from the perspective of easy generation, this is great because the initial image generation, I think it was using Dream Booth, the generation training took very long. So the fact that it can take 5 images or one image per se and generate like a decent avatar or a face for yourself, it's awesome. If you are aware of the Dream Booth training, you know how long it takes and how annoying it gets after a point. So the fact that it can do it with a few images is actually very good. Again, this is not very close to how I look. You can see the comparison here, but it's not too bad. I mean, it's kind of replicating some sort of style. Now, if we increase the number of steps, I'm assuming the generation could get a little bit better, but I'm going to reduce the number of output images to 1 just so we can generate the images way more faster. Again, it's all about kind of experimenting here. And if you increase the style strength, it's going to focus more on the style template. So it's ideal that you keep experimenting. You can also reduce the seed to 0 to ensure that seed is randomized and you don't get similar quality images, after every generation. Waiting a few seconds. Again, this is the images that at least I have uploaded. So let me give it another try with seed being random. And let me see if I can choose some other style. And let me make the prompt a little bit more detailed. Let's try the generation now. Again, the fact that you're generating the image itself with 5 images, it's not going to give out like one shot great results. You will have to keep experimenting, and that's completely fine given that you're generating images with very little training. So just for some context, the actual training of the image model takes very long, and I'm okay to see if I can play around with some of these parameters rather than spending like all day training a model on the face. It's always doing this is always like a better option. All right, so let's see if we can generate a photo of a man IMG and see what we can generate. Post this, I'm going to change the style to something else. So maybe we'll generate IMG as a farmer to see what we get. And post that, we'll try some weird generations. I am trying to think maybe cat is a good direction to see if I can try and generating that. So IMG as a farmer. Again, the headshot is very close, man. Honestly, let's see if we can restart the UI to get the same negative prompt we had earlier. By the way, this is where all the generations will appear. So this is exactly where whatever you do on the front end will kind of show up in the back end there. And then the issue is that it's kind of coming too close face wise. And let's see if we can generate something without a style. And this time we're using photo of a man IMG as a farmer to see if we can generate something on those lines. Post that, let's try generating weird things like IMG as a cat or maybe some other animal once this generation is complete. You can also upload more than just 5 images here to see what kind of output you get. One thing I've also noticed is that having one image, you can see this is very weird generation. So yeah, what I was saying is having one image is sometimes better than having like 5 images of different style. And I'm also kind of going to show you what I mean there. So let me just select one of the images, and so this time I'm just using one of these images and putting in the same prompt as before for farmer and see the kind of image we get now. We're going to be also trying with the image as a cat to see what it does when it comes to generating the blend of images. It's a very weird generation. Going to be trying another one, a photo of a man IMG as a cat. So you can see my guess is that having this glass kind of messes up the image generation because, one of the images that I tried was without the glasses here and the generation looked relatively closer to the face. If you remember the first generation that I was showing you. But once you add things like glass, it kind of complicates things. And I think that's one of the best practices when it comes to the image generation space, that you don't have glasses in the photo. It kind of distorts the image. But you can see this is okay. Like the guy does not exactly look like I do, but it's still kind of generated an image. But the issue again is that we wanted to generate photo of a man IMG as a cat. Let me just see if photo of IMG as a cat. Let's see if that changes anything. I've seen some images where there have been like blends of man-human characteristics, and then there's like an image that resembles some of the characteristics of the person who was used as an input in the prompt. But let's see if we can, replicate it here. I don't think this looks very much, when it comes to what I had in mind, this is basically like a cat with a very similar face of a cat per se. So it's not really what I had expected it to do. But regardless, let me, try one of the images without the glasses and see if that makes any sort of impact in the final generation. So you can see I have a sample here of my face without glasses. I'm not expecting it to have great results, but let's see if we can generate like a better image, or maybe a relatively closer image than when I have the glasses on. When I was doing dream boot training earlier, having glasses actually turned out to be a bad deal because the final generations weren't as aligned. But let's see if we can make any difference here. Relatively more closer than the previous generations. You can actually see the eyes seem a little bit aligned, if not exactly. But the images are, at least this image is relatively closer than the ones that were being generated before. If you reduce the step, the image generations will be faster. So I'm going to be reducing the number of steps here and then generating 2 images. And let's see if the final image looks any different. You can see the minute you reduce the number of steps, the generation is significantly reduced. So it took us 31 seconds with 50 steps to generate 1 image, but now it takes, exact same time to generate 2 images, but with 30 steps. Quality wise, we're just going to see if there's going to be much difference. I anticipate not, but let's see how the generations look like. It's taking relatively longer than expected. So this is how the generation look. Again, this is not the best thing in the world. Obviously, there are scope for improvement. But the fact that you can take 1 image and generate images for you, it's a great thing. Go ahead and play around with these options. So try reducing guidance scale to 3, potentially improve or reduce the style of strength to see if it makes any impact on the final generation. I mostly suspect it's not going to make that difference, but at least if you're looking for early first cut generations, I've seen some of the YouTube videos where the generations have been very, very good. And you can play around with the settings here to kind of do better sort of generations on the faces itself. See, again, these are some of the samples here. All right, so I think that's going to be it for the video usage wise. You can also refer to this if you'd like. But if you have any questions with respect to setup and installation, feel free to kind of drop a comment in the video. But otherwise, I hope you have great time generating your faces, and I hope you get better results than I do.